Hello and welcome to Goom's Open Source Podcast, your go-to for all things open source. I'm your host, Francis, and today we are diving into a powerful topic for Yii2 developers, and that is database seeding using fixtures. Fixtures in Yii2 serve as a mechanism to load predefined data into your database, providing a controlled environment for testing. Throughout this presentation, we'll examine how Yii2 fixtures work, their connection to database seeding, and how they can simplify testing and initial data loading processes in both development and staging environments. Let's jump in. I now want us to discuss the shape of fixtures, how they are configured, and finally how to operationalize them by running or loading them into the database. So the first thing I want to do is to share with you the shape of our fixtures. So fixtures, as we said, they are facilities that enable us to load predefined data into our databases for the sake of testing, instead of essentially operationalizing your forms and testing your data one by one. Without further ado, let us look at what we are going to implement. Fixtures, remember, they are used in Yii2 framework and in Symfony framework. In this particular case, we are narrowing down to Yii2 framework. It's my framework of choice when I want to do things a little bit faster. So the first thing you'll have is a class, which stands for the fixture class. It essentially tells you the model that you're going to use and points to the data source you're going to affect when running your fixtures. Then the other thing is a template. When we talk of pre-configured data or predefined data, it is the template that holds that sort of blueprint for the data you're going to generate. After that, we have the data that is generated by calling or implementing this template several times. When we have that data, then the other thing that we do is loading it to our database. So we do that by loading this fixture, and then it pulls this data and inserts it into our database. So now let us go into VS Code and try to see how all these things come together. Now, before that, I would want to mention that we have, we have our schema, just to paint a picture of what we are going to generate. Remember, this is a project that was under development, and then we decided to share with you some of the work that we do when we are preparing our databases for tests. Now, we use a tool called dbdiagram.io. Essentially, it's a code to diagram kind of tool. In this case, you design your database, your database objects in a VS Code like environment, and then the moment you finish doing that, your entity is generated as a visual. So for me, what I want to use for now is the tenants table. This schema was for a utility billing system for training our students, and We have only scaffolded the Yii2 advanced framework, and therefore we want to show you how to seed data into the database. So it has a lot of tables, but here among them what we have generated is a unit. Remember, now these you'll be dealing with some real estate components and use and customer components. So number one, we have units, and then those units belong to particular properties. And now we're at a point where we want to create our tenants. So we have the tenant entity that we want to seed, and then we can proceed. So that's the gist of it. That's how our tables are coming together. This is how we design them. And I was just digressing so that you don't wonder when I talk of tenant, where am I getting the tenant from? So remember, this is a system that we have already started developing. We have decided to share how fixtures are done in Yii2 because there are not too many documentations that speak about fixtures. So directly now on VS Code. So on VS Code, this is the advanced template. When you install Yii2, and we will drop a link where the documentation to install this is, so that when you're trying to follow this, you can quickly generate and get to where we are. So it has a front end, a console, common, and back end folders or directories. But our key area in terms of configurations will be the console. So console has a config directory, and for any configuration directory in Yii2, and this configuration directory exists in common, backend, and frontend. So here we are only dealing with those operations that will run on the terminal. That is where we configure. We configure. That is why we configure them on the console, because console denotes the CLI bit of PHP in regards to Yii2 framework. So let's switch. Let's quickly go to the main directory. So this is where we configure how our fixtures will operate, and from where the fixture command will fetch its data or look into in its operations. So the namespace common fixtures denotes where all the fixture related files are going to be, and it's common fixtures. So remember, we said we have a common directory, one of the primary directories. So we say it's common fixtures here. So you can see we have a unit fixture and we have a user fixture. Now we have to generate other fixtures. So as you can see, this is where now we will add our other fixtures, and we have template path. You remember now, a template is a blueprint for the data we want to generate, and we will use a library called Faker to generate if it's names or addresses or email addresses. It will help us generate random data for those kinds of data elements. Then the fixture data path, this is where now our data, our pre-configured data, predefined data will be. So it's usually an array. This is for properties. This is for properties. We generated one for properties, so we generated about 5 properties that are going to hold the units. Now we want to generate data and load that data to the database for tenants. So what we will do, we will quickly have a look at one of the fixtures. Let's say the unit fixtures. As we said, as we explained in our earlier explainer, that fixtures are classes that will point to a model, and we can create another one here for our tenants entity. So let's create one here and call it tenant fixture PHP. Then we'll begin with the PHP opening tag. Sometimes the IntelliSense misbehaves. Then we'll do a namespace. I can't type today. Namespace. So these will be common fixtures. Be very mindful when you're doing namespaces. Elements like capitalization can cause real issues, especially when you're deploying in Linux. So Linux mostly will tell you there's no directory that has a capitalized C when you're doing common. So if your common directory has a lowercase for all the letters, then ensure that your namespace reflects that. Then what we will do class. This is tenant fixture, which extends active fixture class. Then we define it when we say, then the model class that we'll be using, you can decide to name the path where it is, or you can use the modern syntax for classes and say this is the tenant model. It's a class. No, I don't like using that. It's a class. So that's it. So you realize the other models we have used the path for the model, common model unit, but if you want to be too careful, let the IntelliSense do the work for you. Just name the tenant, ensure it has been pulled, common models tenant, and reference it as a class. So we are almost over 30% there. What we need to do now, remember what we've done here, we've defined the fixture class. We need to do the template. So for the template, what we will do, just tidy up my image here. So now what we're doing, we are essentially getting the template so that we can create a blueprint from where we can generate our fixtures. So we will go to the template, templates folder. We create our file, which is lowercase tenant.php. Remember, this is an array, a pure array. We are just returning an array, so we are calling it a template. PHP. Why can't I type? This is PHP. So we say return an array. That's it. Now you need to define what kind of initial data will you be looking to define using the Figure library. So let's just begin by defining our Figure object here, equals factory Figure create. That's it. Now we'll have to look at our model and see the kind of data we will be using. So our model here, it's called tenant this is the model. This is the model we are generating data for, tenant model. There it is. So we will open it to the right. Then we will have to close our file menu there. So this is our data file that we're using. So for user ID, yes, I think I can copy all these too. We just copy all these and remove these. No. What I'll do, so we want to create an associative array that looks like these. So just remove all that and say these are 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 9 actually. They're created out and updated that we won't touch. So say 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Forgotten to do something. Comma. So take one by one. Principal name. So for the ID, let us just hard code that for 1. And for the principal name, we will do faker name. So that will generate for us every time this tenant is called upon to generate. For each count, it will generate a unique name. Then we will go to the house number. You remember we have units, so the house number will be dynamically generated from the units model. So this will be faker random element. We will generate an array for unit keys. So these will be primary keys for units. They could range from 1 2 3 4 5 all the way to the final, based on the number of tenants that we have. So that we have a to do there. Then maybe we can just denote it to do. That's it. Then the other one is cell number. So faker has all these related data for randomization. So you can try to see mobile, no, cell, no, phone number. So I will use these E164 numbers. It gives more realistic numbers. Then billing email address. So remember, this is a blueprint we are building, so it's called a template. So we say this is faker email, there's that method, then ID number, national identity number. So this one, we do a random number, faker random number is there. We say 8 strict, yeah, just generate for us 8 numbers, 8 random numbers. Then we have a agreed rent payable. So this would be faker random element. element, and we could say that the guys who are paying 16,000 for a bed sitter or a 1-bedroom, and then we say we have guys who are paying 22,000 for a 2-bedroom, and for a 3-bedroom we have guys paying 28,000. So it will pick a random element from here, then agreed water rates, oh god, what is that? So agreed water rates, so it's still the same. You just copy this, so could say per square meter, per cubic meter of water, the guys were paying 90, others 100, others 110, right? Good. Now, has signed tenancy agreement. It's another property. So this is a tenant, a typical tenant. Then we could use the same thing, fake random element, and we could extract all these arrays into variables so that it looks a bit cleaner. So we could say agreement. Let's just extract that into an array. An array of Boolean options. So you could say this is true, say this is false. The same could happen for water. So we'll call this water and do it here. Water, just extract it for neatness, for readability. Extract it into a variable. The same for rent. Say rent equals that. So it looks a bit neat. Now we have what to do here, units. So if you go to the database, you remember what I showed you here. We have units. Here they are. It's the unit name, the tenant ID, property ID. So a unit is connected to a tenant, it's connected to a property. Here's where we have a property. Now we need to connect it from the tenant point of view. We need to connect the house number to the unit. So we get the units that are available. We go to the database. And have a look at the units. So you can see we have a number of units. The unit name are in numbers and they belong to various properties, you can see. So it is these IDs which will be foreign keys for the column house number. So that is what we want to extract. So we say that units equals the unit model, and find. Just want to be efficient and select just the ID, then ensure the active record dataset we are getting is an array, and then we find all. Now this is an active record kind of collection that we get right? It's a huge compound array. Now what we want to do, we want to index that array in IDs. So we say indexed equals array helper. We'll use the array helper to help us index these. Array helper index. So what are we indexing here? We are indexing, let me just ensure that this is imported. Array helper index units by ID. So we have indexed that array of ours will be indexed using the IDs of those houses. We only want to pick those array keys of the array. We're not interested in any other value. So we say unit keys equals to array keys, and we will use the indexed array. That should give us only the IDs of our units. So we come here, unit keys, oh, it's already there. Okay, great. So that's our template. I know it seems like it's a lot of work, but I deliberately chose a little bit complex model with the relations, so that you can see how you can extract data, how you can create a blueprint for fixtures using a model that has relationships to other models. So now we have that, and based on our diagram, what we need to do now is to generate this data. Sorry for that, is to generate the data that we are going now to load into this database. So let's go ahead and see. We can look at the documentation, the Yii2 documentation, and see how loading is done. Typically I like generating, looking at the command line option. So here, loading fixtures. So fixture classes are suffixed by fixture. So we did that. We did a tenant. Let me just show you. Remember, we did tenant fixture. It's a suffix. It has to be suffixed. It's a rule in Yii2. Then so it says here, prior to loading, data unload sequence is executed. Usually that results in cleaning up all existing data inserted by previous fixture executions. So to load, you do Yii fixture load, then the fixture name. Now that is loading. What about generating the fixtures? I think this is not. We could look at GitHub and we see how these are generated. Let's see. Yeah, here we are. So to generate it, you use the command fixture generate, but you don't want to generate all fixtures. You want to generate for a specific fixture. So to specify the different fixture, what you do, so we're going to look at the documentation for generating fixtures. So what you do, you generate a fixture here, Yii fixture generate users. So you use the template file for that. And in other words, just to show for the people who are a bit geeky, to find the documentation, you do Yii fixture then help. I think this should be a backslash. So you can see in the command prompt, it generates for you all this kind of data, and then it gives you a list of subcommands. So you have fixture generate, it generates fixtures and fills them with faker data. That is what we are going to use, and let us see how Yii has anticipated that to be used. So this is fixture generate, yeah. So as you can see, generate fixtures in Russia, in Russian language. That is not what we want to do. We want to generate a fixture in by default English language. So it will be fixture generate, then we call our template file an account. That's it. So let's go back to our VS Code. We will unleash the command line. Okay, so here we will do Yii fixture generate command, generate. Then we want to use tenant count. We say we want 1,000 tenants. We hope everything is okay. Then we can even confirm from our documentation that you say Yii fixture generate, you use the template name, then the count. So the documentation does not specifically tell you that this is the template name. So most of you might think it's the fixture, but at this particular point, remember in our diagram here, we said once you finish creating a template, you'll use it to generate the data. So for loading is where we use the fixture class. So for this, we'll just say enter, then yes. It should generate for us that data. So it says template will be taken from the path. They give us this path, and the following fixture template files were generated. Tenant. So we should look for tenant under data. Tenant. You can see it has generated that. It has generated our data. So the house numbers, you can see we don't have any zero. We don't have any zero. These have been brought in from the unit model that is fully populated. And even you can see the Boolean randomization here. And even the water bill randomization 100. Here we have 90. Even the rent 22K, 16K, 28K, and the email addresses also have been randomized, and even the serial numbers. We didn't have to type all that. It has generated. Now we load this into our database. Remember, when you go to tenants, we don't have any data. As it loads, we don't have any data here. So we want to load all that data in the template into our table here. So how do we do it? Again, we go to the documentation. The good thing with this framework, just like Artisan in Laravel, Yii framework comes with its markdown files for documentation. So I will clear here and do, we said we load, sorry, say load, then help. So usage, fixture input options, it goes like this. Let's just go up a little bit. So Yii fixture load, then the fixture itself in this particular case. So let's do it. So we say Yii fixture load, then we say tenant, and that's it. Say yes. Expand this. So it's loading that data, and that should bring us to the end of our conversation in regards to doing basic fixture operations. So it's loading at those 1,000 records, the ones we can see here on the screen. It's loading them on the database, and that's it. It has finished doing that. So now if you go to tenants table, you can see those records have been loaded. Thank you for watching. We appreciate your time at Gunzo Open Source Podcast. Thank you and welcome. Till next time, cheers and enjoy.